CEO millionaire sees four street girls, 9 years old, identical to the ex-wife he expelled 10 years ago. Why would four identical young girls begging on a street corner bear the exact face of the wife, a powerful soul, ruthlessly expelled 10 years ago? Get ready for the stunning revelation that these aren't just uncanny lookalikes. They're the quadruplet daughters he never knew she was pregnant with when he cast her out. Subscribe, like, and listen now to discover this gripping story of devastating secrets and a desperate search for redemption. The fog rolled in off Puget Sound, swallowing the pre-dawn Seattle skyline in a blanket of gray indifference. Inside his armored sedan, Nathaniel Voss, CEO and architect of the multi-billion-dollar Voss tech empire, stared blankly at the traffic gridlock. He wasn't usually driving himself, especially not at this hour, and certainly not through this part of the city, a neglected stretch of industrial warehouses and low-income housing known as Harbor Flats. But a potential site visit for a new community tech initiative, combined with an early flight cancellation and his driver calling in sick, had led to this detour through the waking city's underbelly. At 52, Nathaniel commanded a global technology conglomerate that shaped how millions communicated, worked, and lived. He was a titan of industry, his face gracing magazine covers, his pronouncements moving markets. He lived in a minimalist glass and steel mansion overlooking the water, a fortress of solitude staffed by people who anticipated his needs before he voiced them. He had achieved staggering success, the kind his formidable, old-money father, Theodore Voss, had always demanded. Yet, the victory felt hollow, the silence in his life often deafening. Theodore Voss, a man carved from granite and ambition, had orchestrated much of Nathaniel's life, including the painful end of his relationship with Clara 10 years ago. Clara Bellwether. Her name still echoed in the quiet corners of his mind. She had been sunlight and chaos in his structured world, a brilliant, passionate artist with paint perpetually under her fingernails and a laugh that could disarm boardroom VPs. They had met by chance, fallen deeply in love, a whirlwind romance that felt like the only authentic thing in his carefully managed life. But she wasn't suitable. Not from the right family. No advantageous connections, her artistic aspirations deemed frivolous by the Voss dynasty. His father, with his mother's icy cordon bleu endorsement, had delivered the ultimatum: end it with Clara, marry the appropriate daughter of a banking magnate, or forfeit his position as heir apparent to Voss Tech, the company Nathaniel had poured his soul into. He'd been younger then, more susceptible to his father's steely disapproval, terrified of failing the family legacy. He chose ambition. He chose the empire. He told Clara it was over, enduring her heartbroken tears and confused pleas with a coldness that shamed him even now. He'd pushed her away, forced her out of the apartment they shared, telling himself it was necessary, pragmatic. He married the banker's daughter, a brief, sterile union that ended in an amicable divorce 5 years later, producing no heirs and even less happiness. He hadn't seen or heard from Clara since that terrible final night. The traffic finally eased and Nathaniel navigated the unfamiliar streets, the fog swirling around dilapidated buildings. He was about to turn towards the freeway entrance when something caught his eye, making him brake abruptly, the sudden stop earning him an angry honk from the truck behind him. There, huddled together on the damp sidewalk against the cold brick wall of a boarded-up pawn shop, sat four small figures. For girls, they looked identical, all around 9 years old, with tangled masses of curly brown hair escaping worn knit caps, faces smudged with city grime, and eyes, startlingly blue, wide, and hauntingly familiar, scanning the few passing cars. They wore thin, ragged jackets over layers of mismatched clothes, looking utterly vulnerable in the misty gloom. Each held a piece of cardboard with crudely written words. Please help. Need food. Buy bread. Nathaniel's breath hitched. His heart began to pound against his ribs with a force that stole his composure. It wasn't just their plight that arrested him. It was their faces. Beneath the dirt and the weariness, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their cheekbones, the stubborn set of their small chins, it was Clara. It was like looking at miniature echoes of the woman he had loved and ruthlessly discarded a decade ago. The resemblance was uncanny, terrifying. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Quadruplets? It had to be a trick of the light, the fog playing with his guilt-ridden memory. But the image remained sharp and insistent. For little girls, identical, bearing Clara's face, begging on a desolate street corner. Ignoring the impatient traffic, compelled by a force stronger than logic, Nathaniel put the car in park, the engine humming softly in the gray morning. He had to know. He opened the heavy door, stepping out into the damp, chilly air that smelled of salt and diesel. The fog felt like a shroud, muffling the city's sounds, amplifying the frantic beat of his own heart. He approached the children slowly, cautiously, not wanting to frighten them. They watched him warily, huddling closer together, their blue eyes wide with apprehension. He stopped a few feet away, sinking into a crouch despite the damp pavement staining his expensive trousers. His voice, usually resonant with command, came out as a rough, trembling whisper. "Hello," he managed, his throat tight. Who are you?" The four girls stared at him, suspicion etched onto their young faces, identical masks of street-smart caution. They didn't answer immediately, assessing him with an unnerving maturity born of hardship. One girl, who seemed slightly bolder than the others, holding her cardboard sign like a shield, finally spoke. "Why'd you want to know, mister?" Her voice was small, but held a defiant edge. I just want to help," Nathaniel stammered, feeling utterly inadequate. He gestured towards their signs. "You need food?" "Yeah, we're hungry," another girl mumbled, pulling her thin jacket tighter around herself. "My name is Nathaniel," he offered, trying to sound reassuring. "What are your names?" The bold one hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I'm Lily," she said, nodding towards her sisters in turn. "That's Lucy, Lila, and Lena. We're sisters. Quadruplets." The word felt foreign, unreal on his tongue. Lily nodded. "That's what they called us at the place." "The place?" Nathaniel prompted gently. "The orphanage." Lucy, the quietest one who clutched a grimy, one-eyed teddy bear, whispered, burying her face slightly in its matted fur. "St. Jude's home for children." "You live there?" Nathaniel asked, his mind racing. "We ran away." Lila, who had been studying Nathaniel with intense curiosity, piped up. "Weeks ago. It wasn't nice there. Too many rules, not enough food. And we got to find our mom. Find her mother." The phrase struck Nathaniel like a physical blow. "Your mother?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Where is she?" "We don't know," Lily admitted, her bravado wavering slightly, revealing the child beneath. She left us at St. Jude's when we were babies. Said she couldn't take care of us. But we know she's out there somewhere. We have to find her." Nathaniel felt the ground shift beneath him. Left in an orphanage 10 years ago. Babies, it fit. Horribly, perfectly it fit. He forced himself to ask the next question, dreading the answer. Do you know her name?" She told the lady at the place her name was Clara. Lena, the fourth sister, offered, her voice surprisingly clear. "Clara Bellwether. But we don't remember her face. Just the name. Clara Bellwether." His Clara. The confirmation landed like a final, crushing blow. These weren't just girls who looked like Clara. They were Clara's daughters. And given the timing, the impossibility of coincidence. They had to be his. His daughters, born after he had coldly, calculatedly forced their mother out of his life, pregnant and alone. The full weight of his actions from a decade ago slammed into him. He saw Clara's tear-streaked face that last night, heard her begging him to reconsider, felt the phantom weight of her hand on his arm as he turned away, utterly oblivious, wrapped in his own ambition and filial duty. He hadn't just broken her heart. He had potentially condemned her and their children to a life of poverty and despair. The success he had chosen over her suddenly felt like ashes in his mouth. He looked at the four small faces, so achingly familiar, yet marked by a hardship no child should endure. Their resilience was astonishing, their determination to find the mother they didn't even remember, heartbreaking. His daughters had been living on the streets, begging for bread, while he dined in Michelin-star restaurants and closed multi-million-dollar deals. The shame was a physical sickness rising in his throat. He couldn't leave them here, not for another second. "Listen to me," he said, his voice gaining a measure of firmness, fueled by a desperate need to act, to atone. "Lily, Lucy, Lila, Lena, you can't stay out here. It's cold, it's dangerous. Let me help you. Please, I can get you food, a warm place to stay." They exchanged uncertain glances. Lily narrowed her eyes. "Why would you help us?" "People don't usually help." "Because..." Nathaniel struggled for the right words, the truth too complex, too raw for this moment. "Because no child should be cold and hungry. Because you remind me of someone I care about very much. Please, trust me, just for a little while. Let me buy you breakfast, somewhere warm." He stood up slowly, extending a hand. After a long moment of silent deliberation, Lily looked at her sisters, who all gave slight, almost imperceptible nods. She squared her small shoulders and took a tentative step towards him. "Okay, mister," she said. "Breakfast, but no funny business." Nathaniel let out a shaky breath of relief. He led them to his sedan, the long, dark car looking absurdly out of place on the gritty street. He unlocked the doors, ignoring the mud tracked onto the plush carpets as they climbed tentatively inside, huddling together on the back seat, eyes wide as they took in the luxurious interior. As he pulled away from the curb, leaving the bleak corner behind, Nathaniel glanced in the rearview mirror at the four identical faces, reflections of his past, his failure, and now, impossibly, his future. The fog outside seemed to mirror the confusion and guilt swirling within him. But one thing was crystal clear: his life and theirs had just changed irrevocably. He had to find Clara. He had to make this right. The arrival of Nathaniel Voss at his waterfront mansion, accompanied by four small, disheveled, identical girls, sent quiet shockwaves through his household staff. Mrs. Albright, his long-serving, unflappable housekeeper, met them at the door, her customary composure momentarily slipping as she took in the scene. Nathaniel, however, cut off any potential questions with curt, clear instructions. "Mrs. Albright, these are guests," he stated, his voice tight. "Lily, Lucy, Lila, and Lena. They need baths, clean clothes, warm food, and gentle care. Please see to it immediately. Use the adjoining guest suites on the third floor. Ensure they feel safe and comfortable." His tone brooked no argument. While Mrs. Albright, recovering her poise, led the wide-eyed but silent girls away with practiced kindness, Nathaniel strode into his minimalist office overlooking the turbulent gray waters of the Sound. He felt brittle, on the verge of shattering. He needed confirmation, irrefutable proof, though his gut already screamed the truth. He picked up his secure line and made a call, not to his corporate lawyers, but to Dr. Elias Thorne, a renowned geneticist who ran a private, highly discreet lab often used by the city's elite for sensitive matters. "Elias, it's Nathaniel Voss," he said, dispensing with pleasantries. "I need you. Here. Now. Utmost discretion is paramount. Bring everything you need for expedited DNA comparison testing." He hung up before Thorne could respond, knowing the urgency in his voice would suffice. While waiting, Nathaniel paced the length of his vast office, the floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting his pale, strained face. He glanced towards the hallway where the girls had disappeared. His daughters. The word was both terrifying and exhilarating. He tried to picture Clara pregnant, alone, giving birth to 4 babies. The sheer physical and emotional toll must have been immense. How could she possibly have managed? Guilt gnawed at him, relentless and sharp. Dr. Thorne arrived within the hour, discreet and professional. Nathaniel explained the situation in clipped, terse sentences, omitting the emotional backstory but providing the necessary context. 4 identical 9-year-old girls, suspected biological children, mother's name Clara Bellwether. He needed absolute certainty fast. Dr. Thorne, accustomed to unusual requests from the wealthy, simply nodded and set up his equipment. Gently, Nathaniel explained to the girls, who were now clean, dressed in soft new clothes provided by Mrs. Albright, and cautiously eating sandwiches in a sunny breakfast room, that Dr. Thorne needed to take a small sample from inside their cheeks to help find information about their family history. They were hesitant, but Lily, sensing Nathaniel's underlying tension and perhaps his genuine concern, agreed first, followed by her sisters. The procedure was quick and painless. Nathaniel provided his own sample without flinching. The wait for the preliminary results felt like an eternity. Nathaniel tried to talk to the girls, asking about their favorite colors, foods, what they liked to do. He learned Lily was fiercely protective and pragmatic. Lucy loved animals and drew constantly. Lila was fascinated by how things worked. She'd already tried to dismantle a remote control. And Lena was the most outgoing, a chatterbox curious about everything in the huge house. In their gestures, their expressions, the cadence of their speech, he saw fleeting, heart-stabbing glimpses of Clara, her determined frown, her thoughtful gaze, her quick smile. Finally, Dr. Thorne returned, his expression grave. He handed Nathaniel a sealed report. "The results are conclusive, Nathaniel," he said quietly. "The probability of paternity is 99.999%. These 4 girls are biologically your daughters." Nathaniel sank into the nearest chair, the report clutched in his hand, the clinical confirmation hitting him with the force of a physical blow despite his certainty. Tears welled, hot and blurring his vision. He hadn't just suspected, he knew, but seeing in black and white made it undeniably real. 4 daughters, a decade of their lives missed. He bowed his head, shoulders shaking, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of regret, grief, and a terrifying sense of responsibility. "I abandoned them," he choked out, the words torn from his soul. "And their mother. Oh God, Clara." He pulled himself together with monumental effort. There was no time for self-pity. He needed to find Clara. Now, he summoned his head of security, a former FBI agent named Marcus Thorne, no relation to the doctor, a man known for his discretion and tenacity. "Marcus," Nathaniel commanded, his voice hoarse but firm, "I need you to find someone. Clara Bellwether. She would be around 40 now. She gave birth to quadruplets, these girls, roughly 9.5 years ago. She placed them in St. Jude's home for children shortly after birth and then disappeared. Find out everything. Where she went, what happened to her, where she is now. Use every resource, spare no expense. I need answers." Marcus, absorbing the shocking information without visible reaction, simply nodded. "Consider it done, Mr. Voss." As Marcus left to initiate the search, Nathaniel looked towards the room where his daughters were quietly drawing, their identical heads bent over paper. He had confirmation. Now came the hardest part, facing the consequences of his past and finding the woman whose life he had irrevocably broken. The investigation into Clara's lost decade had begun, and Nathaniel braced himself for whatever painful truths it might uncover. The search for Clara Bellwether proved more difficult than Nathaniel had anticipated, even with Marcus Thorne's considerable expertise and Vostek's almost limitless resources. Clara seemed to have vanished into thin air after leaving the girls at St. Jude's. The orphanage records were minimal, citing only extreme poverty and inability to care for the infants as the reason for relinquishment. There was no forwarding address, no emergency contact listed. Marcus's team painstakingly reconstructed the fragments of her life. They learned Clara had initially stayed with a distant relative after Nathaniel forced her out, hiding her pregnancy until it became obvious. The relative, struggling financially herself, couldn't offer long-term support. Clara had given birth prematurely to the quadruplets at a county hospital, a harrowing experience she endured alone. Faced with raising 4 newborns in abject poverty with no support system, she made the agonizing decision to relinquish them, hoping they'd find a better life through adoption, a hope that Nathaniel learned with a fresh wave of guilt. Never materialized due to the challenges of placing 4 siblings together. After leaving St. Jude's, Clara drifted. She worked low-wage jobs, cleaning motel rooms, washing dishes, waitressing, often moving from town to town, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots or be easily traced. There were hints of depression, periods where she seemed to fall off the grid entirely. It painted a picture of a woman broken by circumstance, haunted by loss, struggling just to survive day by day. While the search dragged on, weeks turning into 2 long months, Nathaniel focused on the 4 small lives unexpectedly thrust into his care. Life in the Voss mansion underwent a seismic shift. The minimalist silence was replaced by the chatter and squabbles of 9-year-old girls. Nathaniel established routines, regular meals, tutoring sessions, doctor and dentist checkups they had clearly never had, bedtime stories. He learned, through trial and error, how to be a father. He discovered their distinct personalities blossomed when they felt safe. Lily remained the responsible leader, often trying to parent her sisters and sometimes Nathaniel. Lucy was the quiet observer, expressing herself through intricate drawings that revealed a sensitive soul. Lila, fascinated by technology, constantly peppered Nathaniel with questions about his work, her sharp mind soaking up information like a sponge. Lena was the social butterfly, charming the household staff and demanding hugs and attention with infectious enthusiasm. He made mistakes. He was sometimes impatient, occasionally retreated into work mode, struggled with setting boundaries. But he kept trying. He helped with homework, organized movie nights, took them sailing on the Sound, where Lily proved surprisingly adept at the helm, and visited museums, where Lila nearly dismantled an interactive exhibit. He found himself laughing more than he had in years, feeling a connection that thawed the ice around his heart. The girls, in turn, began to relax, their street-hardened caution slowly giving way to tentative trust. One evening, Lena, snuggled beside him watching a cartoon, patted his arm and declared, "You're not so bad for a dad." It was a small moment, but it felt like a monumental victory. He also gently, age-appropriately, began telling them about Clara, not about the painful breakup, but about her warmth, her art, her laughter trying to give him a sense of the mother they desperately wanted to find. He promised them, repeatedly, "We will find her." Finally, Marcus delivered the news. They found Clara. She was living in Portland, Oregon, renting a room in a dilapidated boarding house, working part-time cleaning offices. She was frail, Marcus reported, and seemed unwell. Nathaniel felt a surge of conflicting emotions, immense relief, sharp anxiety, and profound dread. He booked a private jet immediately. After careful discussion with a child psychologist he'd consulted, he decided to bring the girls. They needed to see their mother, and perhaps their presence was the only thing that could bridge the abyss of the past decade. The journey was tense. Nathaniel briefed the girls gently, explaining their mother might be sad or confused, that she had been through a very hard time. They listened solemnly, clutching drawings and small gifts they had made for her. The boarding house was even grimmer than Nathaniel had imagined, located in a bleak, neglected part of Portland. He left the girls waiting in the car with his security detail, instructing them to stay put but be ready. He climbed the creaking stairs to the second floor, his heart pounding, and knocked on the door marked C. Bellwether. The door opened a crack, revealing a sliver of a face. Thinner, older, lines of hardship etched around her eyes and mouth, but unmistakably Clara. Her blue eyes, once vibrant, were clouded with exhaustion and suspicion. They widened in shocked disbelief as she recognized him. "Nathaniel," she breathed, her voice a rough whisper. What are you doing here?" "Clara," he said, his own voice thick. "Can I come in? Please. We need to talk." She hesitated, then slowly opened the door. The room was tiny, barely furnished, containing only a narrow bed, a small table, and a rickety chair. Drawings were tacked to the wall. Intricate, beautiful sketches that showed her talent had survived, even if her spirit seemed dimmed. "How did you find me?" she asked, wrapping her arms around herself defensively. "I hired people," he admitted. "Clara, I saw them. The girls. On the street in Seattle." Clara flinched as if struck. "The girls? My girls? What are you talking about?" Panic flared in her eyes. "They ran away from the orphanage, Clara. They were living on the streets. I found them begging for food." He saw the color drain from her face, saw her sway slightly. "They look just like you," he continued softly. "They told me their mother's name was Clara Bellwether. I did a DNA test, Clara. They're my daughters." Clara stared at him, comprehension dawning, followed swiftly by a wave of raw anguish. "Your daughters?" she cried, tears finally breaking free. "You have no right. You threw me out. You abandoned me when I needed you. You didn't care then. Why should you care now?" Her voice rose, filled with 10 years of suppressed pain and anger. "You came here to take them away from me too, didn't you? Like you took everything else." "No, Clara, no." Nathaniel stepped towards her, hands raised placatingly. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I never knew you were pregnant. If I had known..." "If you had known," she sobbed, sinking onto the edge of the bed, "would it have mattered? Would your precious family have approved? Would you have chosen me, us, over your empire?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Nathaniel didn't have an easy answer. He could only offer the truth of his present self, the man forged by regret. He knelt before her, mirroring his posture when he first met the girls. "I was a fool, Clara," he said, his voice choked with remorse. "A coward driven by ambition and fear. I made a terrible mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. I can't change the past. I can't undo the pain I caused you. But finding those girls, our daughters, it changed everything. I'm sorry. God, Clara, I am so profoundly sorry." As if summoned by the emotional intensity, A soft knock came at the door. Nathaniel nodded mutely. His security guard opened it, revealing Lily, Lucy, Lila, and Lena standing hesitantly in the hallway, their faces alight with nervous hope. "Mommy," Lily whispered, stepping tentatively into the room. Clara looked up, her tear-streaked face registering shock, then overwhelming love as she saw her 4 daughters, healthy and whole, standing before her. "My babies!" she cried, opening her arms wide. The girls rushed to her, all 4 trying to hug her at once, crying and talking over each other. "Mommy, we found you. We missed you. We brought you pictures." Nathaniel watched the reunion through blurred eyes, his heart aching with a complex mix of joy and sorrow. This was the reckoning, the long-overdue collision of past and present. The first, fragile step towards an uncertain future. Bringing Clara back to Seattle was the beginning of a long, complex healing process. Physically, she was suffering from malnutrition and exhaustion, exacerbated by untreated anxiety and depression stemming from years of trauma and instability. Nathaniel ensured she received the best medical and therapeutic care, settling her not in the main mansion initially, but in a private, beautifully appointed guest wing with dedicated nursing support, giving her space and quiet to recover at her own pace. The reunion between Clara and her daughters was layered with emotion. The girls craved maternal affection, showering Clara with attention, stories, and drawings. Clara, overwhelmed with love and guilt, struggled initially to meet their needs while battling her own fragility. There were moments of pure joy, reading stories together, tentative hugs, shared laughter over silly jokes. There were also moments of difficulty. Clara's energy would suddenly flag, or a painful memory would trigger tears, confusing and sometimes frightening the girls. Nathaniel navigated his own role carefully. He wasn't trying to replace Clara, but to support her recovery and co-parent their daughters. He acted as a buffer when Clara was overwhelmed, took the girls on outings, maintained their routines, and facilitated family time that was manageable for Clara. His relationship with Clara herself remained complicated. The deep well of hurt and resentment couldn't vanish overnight. There were difficult conversations, tears shed, apologies repeated. Forgiveness, they both realized, wasn't a single event, but an ongoing process built on consistent action, patience, and a shared commitment to their children. Slowly, painstakingly, Clara began to heal. With proper nutrition, medical care, and therapy, her physical strength returned. Supported and safe, perhaps for the first time in a decade, her spirit began to mend. She started drawing again, first tentatively, then with growing confidence, her art becoming an outlet for her complex emotions. She gradually spent more time with the girls, her energy and resilience increasing. She moved into the main house, choosing rooms near her daughters, reclaiming her role as their mother, side by side with the father they were all getting to know. Nathaniel, meanwhile, channeled his remorse into tangible action. He established the Clara's 4 Foundation, endowing it with a significant portion of his personal fortune. Its mission was ambitious: to radically improve the child welfare system, focusing on preventing family separation due to poverty, supporting single mothers, funding quality foster care, reforming orphanages, and aiding runaway or homeless youth. He started by pouring resources into St. Jude's, demanding systemic changes, and implementing programs focused on family reunification and support, ensuring no other children would feel the need to flee as his daughters had. He also confronted his own family. His mother was shocked into silence by the news. His father, Theodore, initially reacted with blustering disapproval, calling the situation a scandal. Nathaniel, no longer the insecure young man seeking approval, stood firm. "They're my daughters, father," he stated coolly. "Clara is the mother of my children. They're my family, my priority, and my legacy. Vostek will reflect that. Your acceptance is welcome, but not required." He formally changed his will, ensuring Clara and all 4 girls were not only financially secure for life, but would inherit significant controlling shares and board positions within Vostek, securing their future and integrating them into the empire that had once excluded their mother. Theodore, faced with Nathaniel's unshakable resolve, eventually offered a grudging, awkward acceptance. Life found a new rhythm. The Voss mansion, once a monument to lonely success, became a chaotic, vibrant family home. There were arguments over homework, laughter during family meals, movie marathons, and art projects spread across the vast living room floor. Nathaniel continued to run Vostek, but his perspective had fundamentally shifted. He delegated more, prioritized family time, and spearheaded corporate social responsibility initiatives with genuine passion, inspired by his foundation's work. One sunny afternoon, Nathaniel sat with Lena in the newly designated art room, a space filled with light, canvases, and every possible art supply, a tribute to Clara's passion. He was patiently helping Lena mix paints, a skill Clara had taught him years ago. Lena, dabbing blue on her paper sky, looked up at him, her blue eyes serious. "Daddy," she said thoughtfully, "you found us and you found Mommy and you fixed everything. You're like a superhero, right?" Nathaniel felt a lump form in his throat. He put down the paintbrush and hugged Lena tightly, soon joined by her sisters who had been working nearby. "Oh, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "No, you girls and your mommy, you're my superheroes. You rescued me. You gave me back my heart. You gave me a family." Later that evening, during their now routine family dinner, Clara reached across the table and tentatively placed her hand on Nathaniel's. He met her gaze, seeing warmth, lingering caution, but also the unmistakable glimmer of forgiveness, of partnership. He covered her hand with his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey, the painful past giving way to a hopeful present. From the depths of regret sparked by a chance encounter on a foggy morning, Nathaniel Voss had found more than his lost love and the children he never knew. He had found 4 miracles who mirrored the best parts of the woman he'd wronged. In finding them, in fighting for them and their mother, he had finally found redemption, transforming his own life from desolate wealth to the immeasurable riches of family, purpose, and a second chance he was determined not to waste. The echoes of the past remained, but now they harmonized with the vibrant sounds of a future being rebuilt together.